Okay. Good evening. Yeah. We'll talk about that. Okay. So words we will see later. I'll discuss that. But actually, we were in external sector, if you remember, and we've talked about the differences between FDI, FPI. Okay. Talked about different bonds, transition bonds, and these things, right? Most of the difficult concepts are over. Okay, so now we have more focus on facts after this chapter. Okay. Okay. See, technical discussions, some are asking like when we have technical discussions, please guide us. See, technical, there was no much of technical, only first 2 days there is more of technicality. Now, when we talk about agriculture or labor employment, okay, so there it is what to read, that's all. And there's no much difficulty. It is not my effort anymore, it's your effort that is more important. But I'll tell you what to see in a scheme. These things we will see. But before that, here, if you, we have talked about internationalization of rupee. Then we have discussed Vostro and Nostro. So last time also there was no question on Vostro, Nostro. So it is better that this time it is important that you read Vostro, Nostro. Okay, so that is important. Okay, now here for internationalization of rupees, some measures have been taken. And one such measure is also the Spectra project. Okay, so for internationalization of rupee, you can see there is something called as Spectra project. Okay, so if you see the Spectra project, software platform for ECBs and trade credits, reporting and approval to streamline ECBs and trade credit processes. Okay, so it is basically a platform that will streamline ECBs and trade credits. And yesterday, if I remember, I asked you all to find out what are the things that are there as part of ECB. Okay, and who all can raise ECB? Checked it? Okay, so can SIDB raise ECB? Yes. Okay, so you would have checked that. Okay, and what is the basic condition for some entity to raise ECB? Is there any condition like that? Is there any condition that a particular country to raise ECB? Like, does it need to, if FDI is permitted? No, no. So for ECB, is there any condition about FDI? That means you have not read it properly. Okay. So go back and read. Okay, so you have not read it. Go back and read. Is ECB permitted for Exim banks? Port trust? So these are what they can ask in the exam. Got the point right. And is trade credit seen as ECB? Okay. And also check transferable development rights certificates. Transferable development right. Transferable development right certificate. See, you have to look beyond the basic word now, because already from 2010 onwards you're asking repo rate increases, what will happen? Okay, so these type of questions are already asked. ECB, they've asked. If rupee is depreciating, what should be done? These are already asked. And when you solve all the previous questions, these are already covered. But now what you might find is one statement may be simple, another statement will be little complicated, or a factual statement. There you will find like, oh, we have only read one statement, and you believe that UPSC is all about guesswork. No, it is that our research is not 100% okay. That there's a trouble with respect to the research we have done. Okay, so that is what you have to do now. Okay, fine. Now, then, they have also liberalized FEMA regulations. Okay, so liberalized FEMA regulations to encourage use of Indian rupee settlement for cross-border transactions. This is what they have done. Okay, and one more important observation. What is this currency swap? What happens in currency swap? Why is it done? No. On regular basis also. Suppose there are two central banks which have signed an agreement, and they are trying to fix the exchange rate. Suppose you are saying $1 is 80 for the future also. Why are you doing that? Because you know that there can be depreciation of rupee further. See, depreciation of rupee, will it make my external loans expensive? Got the point, right? When I'm taking some external loans from outside India, you're borrowing in dollars. Okay, you have taken loan when $1 is 80 rupees. You have to pay back dollars only, and today $1 has touched almost like 92. That means my external credit or my external borrowing is becoming expensive for me. This is called as currency risk. To handle currency risk, one way of doing it is through masala bonds. Masala bonds also, the main purpose of masala bond is what? To shift the currency risk from the borrower to the investor. Currency risk is shifted from the borrower. Borrower is somebody who is issuing the bonds. Investor is somebody who is buying the bonds. So now in masala bonds, currency risk is not eliminated. In masala bonds, currency risk has been shifted from the borrower to the investor. This is what you should understand. Same logic. So to handle currency risk to some extent, you sign some agreement. The central banks can also sign some agreements. So you're trying to hedge the risk of currency by signing some agreements. I hope you're able to get this. So saying $1 is 80, I'm going to fix it for the subsequent years also, or maybe for the 6 months or 1 year period. Okay, so that means in future also when you're doing some trade, you're doing it at this exchange rate which you have fixed. Okay, so why are you doing it? Basically to handle the currency risk. I hope it is clear. Okay, now one more important observation here. There was a question on NIR and REIR concept already in UPSC. Okay, and always remember NIR and REIR. So why are we discussing this? It shows rupee weakens to a record low with the real effective exchange rate indicating continued undervaluation. Okay, so this is basically, that means the REIR number is coming down, is what he's saying. See, REIR, two things you should remember. One is nominal effective exchange rate, very basic, real effective exchange rate. These are indices. It's an index. The meaning of an index is it's a representative basket. Index is built for convenience always, remember, whether it is CPI, WPI, and today we are talking about PPI, Producer Price Index, okay? Or all these indices are built for convenience. Even we are building this index for convenience. So another one is what? Nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate. These are not indices. These are not indices. Okay, so effective exchange rate. effective exchange. Here it is effective exchange. Here it is nominal exchange, real exchange. Okay, so real exchange rate is equal to nominal exchange rate Okay, so E is nominal exchange rate. You not remember the formula as it is, but E is the nominal exchange rate. P is the price of the commodity in foreign country, P star this one. And this is price of the product in India. Or in simple words, I can write real exchange rate as nominal exchange rate divided by P by P star, which is nothing but nominal exchange rate divided by PPP. Purchasing power parity exchange rate. India ranks 3 with respect to PPP, GDP calculated at PPP. I'll talk about that when I'm talking about the GDP discussion. Okay, so trade competitiveness between India and US, if I want to check. Of course, I can't dig deeper, we don't have so much time. So trade competitiveness, if I have to check, it depends. Trade competitiveness between two countries I'm checking. When I'm talking about only two countries, you talk about nominal exchange rate, real exchange rate. When I say effective exchange rate, you're talking about a basket of currencies. Whenever you're talking about effective exchange rate, here it is basket of currencies, and these are indices. All indices have a base year. That means for them also there is a base year. Which year is the base year? Okay. So base year is there when you talk about index. Here if I'm talking about two trading partners, let's say I'm talking about how India-US trade and how competitive India is with respect to US. Okay, so that I will get to know through real exchange rate. Is that okay? So trade competitiveness of a country is decided based on real exchange rate. So real exchange rate, trade competitiveness is based on, it's directly proportional to the nominal exchange rate. Nominal exchange rate, I'm taking our nominal exchange rate to be 80. So if nominal exchange rate is 80, if it becomes 100, we'll be able to export more to US. So that is the reason it's directly proportional. Then price of a product in US. Of course, price of product in US. This is what P star is. It is directly proportional. That means if there is an ice cream which I'm comparing in India and US, in India the ice cream is, let's say, 100 rupees or 80 rupees, and in US basically the same ice cream. Okay, you have India and US. Okay, so ice cream is costing 80 rupees in India. The same ice cream is costing $1 in US. The PPP exchange rate, how do you get this PPP? You're taking a basket. In that basket, I've put only ice cream. And I have the basket of commodities, I'm only putting ice cream there. So what is the PPP exchange rate between India and US? It is $1 is equal to 80 rupees. Okay, let's say I'm changing the ice cream value. Ice cream is 40 rupees in India. And the same ice cream is $1 in US. That means the PPP exchange rate now becomes $1 is equal to 40 rupees. This is PPP exchange rate. But nominal exchange rate, what you see in the newspapers every day, that is $1.92 rupees. For convenience, I've taken that as 80 here. Okay, so GDP can be estimated at nominal exchange rates, where India's rank is 4. GDPs can be estimated at PPP exchange rate, where India's rank is 3. Already they have asked this question. First statement was the basic definition of PPP. That was correct. Second statement was they gave a 5th rank or something. That is wrong. India ranks 5. India ranks 2. India ranks 3 with respect to PPP. India ranks 4 with respect to nominal exchange rate. Is that okay? So here $1 is 40 is the PPP exchange rate. $1.80 is the nominal exchange rate. So trade competitiveness depends on what? Trade competitiveness of a country depends on, in this case, it is 80 divided by 40, that is equal to 2. Trade competitiveness. So trade competitiveness is greater, here real exchange, this real exchange rate is 2. The meaning of 2 here is to get, if an American buys, if I want to buy one ice cream from US, I have to give 2 ice creams from India. Are you able to get this? This is what it means. It means if one ice cream, one basket, if I have to get it from US, one basket of ice cream I'm getting from US, I have to exchange how many baskets from India? 2 baskets from India. Okay, so that means for the same price, was the American, instead of buying that basket in US, he will get 2 baskets from India. So India will be able to export more to US. Tomorrow, if this real exchange rate is becoming 4, it means for one US basket, they will get 4 Indian baskets. This is what is the meaning. Or it shows my real exchange rate is depreciating. This 2 to 4 means my real exchange rate is depreciating, or I am going to export more. For one US basket, you're getting 4 Indian basket. Tomorrow, if this becomes 8, what does that mean? For one US basket, they will get 8 Indian basket. That means Indian real exchange rate is going down. I hope you're able to get this. So India will be able to export more. For suppose, if I reverse it, it becomes 40 by 80. Okay, so that is, number is less than 1, 0.5. What does that mean? For one US basket of ice cream, you will only get half Indian basket. Half Indian basket. So what will happen now? India will buy from US. India will buy from US. US will export, India will import. I hope it is clear. Is that okay? So, or if this is 0.5, it means my real exchange rate is going up or appreciating. My basket is becoming expensive, means appreciating. I hope you're able to get this. If this is becoming 2, 4, 6, 8, my basket is becoming weaker or cheaper. So, real exchange rate number greater than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, India will be able to export more. If it is less than 1, India starts importing from US. This is what is the basic concept. So here it is very simple. See, always effective exchange rates, what does it measure? For example, you have dollar index. It's also an index. What does it measure? It measures how much of those liquid currencies are required to buy a dollar. What is it measuring? Dollar index measures the strength of dollar with respect to a basket of currencies. Basket of which currencies? Liquid currencies. That means how much of these basket of currencies I need to buy one US dollar. If dollar index number is increasing, suppose if my CPI basket number is increasing, that means I need more money to afford that basket. Suppose CPI index is there. CPI index, you have some 6 categories of items and it is indexed to a base year, that is 100. If the basket number is increasing, the number became 110. What does that mean? I have to spend more money from my pocket to buy this basket. That means this basket is becoming expensive. Same logic. Dollar index number is increasing, means I need more of these currencies to buy this dollar. That means dollar is appreciating. But recently you observe dollar value is coming down with respect to these currencies. What does it mean? I need less of these currencies to buy dollar. I hope it is clear. Same logic here. Now NIR and REIR, these are all indices. NIR is not adjusted to inflation. REIR is adjusted to inflation. Generally in books you read this, real exchange means adjusted to inflation. Inflation effect is removed. Here inflation effect is not removed. But both are indices only. So what happens here? You're taking rupees there and you're also having basket of currencies. Basket of major trading partners. It can be 6 trading partners or it can be 40 trading partners now. So 40 trading partners, how did you decide? These are the trading partners with whom you do maximum trade. As simple as that. Okay, so now what does this R index, nominal effective exchange rate or real effective exchange rate, what does it measure? Now it is going to measure how much of these currencies I need to buy Indian rupee. It is not how much of rupees you need to buy this basket. It is how much of these basket of currencies you need to buy dollar. Here it is how much of these currencies, 6 currencies, let's say you have dollar, euro, pound, Japanese yen, etc. 6, how did you select these 6? These are the major trading partners with India. Based on, it is a weighted average basket. That means if you are putting more weight to US currency, you're putting that because maximum trade you do with US. That is the reason you do that. China, suppose you're doing a lot of trade with China. That is the reason more weight is given to that currency in this basket. But ultimately, what is it going to check? It checks how much of this basket of currencies I need to buy Indian rupee. That means if REER number is increasing, it means I need more of these basket of currencies to buy rupee. NEER number is increasing, index numbers are like this. 100 is the base year number, 2015. And if this index number is increasing, it means I need more of this basket to buy rupees. Okay, so I need more of this basket to buy rupee means my rupee is appreciating and India will be less trade competitive. That means India can't export. If this index number is coming down, it means I need less of this basket to buy rupee, or rupee is depreciating. That means index number is coming down. It means rupee is becoming weaker. Weaker means more exports or trade competitive. This was a question they have asked in the concept. But the whole logic is that. I think it is clear. But these are index numbers only. Index number is increasing, means rupee is becoming stronger. Index number is coming down, it means rupee is becoming weaker. Rupee is becoming stronger and weaker with respect to what? A weighted average basket of largest trading partner currencies. It can be a 6 currency trading basket, or it can be a 40 currency trading basket. That is what is REER and NEER. Basic understanding. I think that's so. Why are we discussing here? It is clearly mentioned that India's REER number, US dollar depreciated, other liquid currencies became stronger. That means obviously our rupee has depreciated a lot. That means you should have had more scope for exports, but you don't have more scope for exports because of tariffs. Otherwise, logically speaking, whenever my REER is becoming weaker, I should be able to export more, but my exports are not so high as expected because of the tariff lines. See, higher REER number makes exports more expensive and imports cheaper, reducing trade competitiveness. Higher REER. Lower REER number means India will become more export competitive or trade competitive. That is what it is. Understood. Index. It's an index. Okay. So moving forward, now there is this tax which US comes up with all kind of nonsense. Here you can see this is remittance tax. And you know that India ranks, okay, few things here. So here, when we look at remittances, one, you know, remittances are part of my current account. Okay, these are more like transfers. Okay, so here if you see, remittance inflow doubled to 118.7 billion in 23-24 compared to 2011. So if I'm taking 10 to 12 year period, you observe that there is remittance. But China, the situation is different. You don't find remittances. Remittances are consistently falling in China. People are not moving out of China because they're able to find jobs in China. This is one important observation. India remittances are increasing, and in China remittances are decreasing. This is one. Second, here you see here one factual area. When top 5 sources for top 5 source countries for India, it is obviously US. Top source of remittance. Maximum remittance is coming from there, followed by UAE, UK, Saudi, and Singapore. Okay. States which receive, obviously Maharashtra, followed by Kerala. Kerala is remittance-driven state. Remittance-driven state means most of the time the consumption in Kerala is hugely dependent on remittances. Hugely dependent on remittances. Why do you want to know about lottery? Most of the states, lottery is not there. Most of the states, it's banned, right? So, but in some 1 or 2 states, it's still there. Okay, fine. We'll come to lottery later. Right? Is there tax on lottery? If you win a lottery, 30%. Okay. What is windfall gains? Go back and check. Okay, since you asked me. So windfall gains. Okay, also check whether windfall gains is part of national income calculation or not. Okay, so go check that since he has talked about lottery. Is that okay? Let's move forward now. Now, one is top 3 recipient states, then top 5 source countries. Okay, so from where we are getting remittances. Okay, now here you can see remittances accounted for over 10% of India's $1 trillion gross current account inflows. Now, China has trade deficit or surplus? Surplus, huge surplus. Checked it, it was there in the recent newspapers. This can come up as a statement in the exam. That means the article was Trump's tariff did not affect China. And there's a huge discussion. It in fact benefited China. So huge trade surplus for China. That is what you observe. Okay, fine. So now what is this? Suppose somebody from US is sending 1 lakh rupees. Okay. So he has to pay 3,500 tax. This is what is this bill which is talking about excise tax on remittance transfer. Trump has all these innovative ideas. Okay, so 1 lakh if he's sending, then some money is going to be deducted in the form of tax here. Okay, so that is what. Yesterday I've asked you to go and check liberalized remittances scheme, if you remember. Okay, is it there for both current and capital account? Yes, that is the first thing you have to remember. How much can I remit? 2,50,000. Simple logic, in a year also, if you can want to buy some shares in the US market also, there is an upper limit there, in the sense that RBI otherwise intervenes, that is about $2,50,000. Okay, so otherwise there would be some permissions, limitations that are there. This is part of the LRS scheme only. Okay, so if you are buying some shares outside India, will that be reflected in my capital account? Suppose you are a resident of India, you are buying some shares outside India, will that be reflected in my capital account? You'll tell me by the end of the class. I think you got my point, right? Got the question? Suppose so BOP, what does BOP show? BOP shows the transactions of resident of India with rest. It is an accounting statement which records transactions of resident of India with rest of the world. I'm asking you if I'm buying some equity instruments, or some institutions are buying some equity instruments outside India. Outside India, they're buying some equity instruments, means you're buying shares of Amazon, institutions are buying shares of Amazon or maybe Tesla or whatever. Okay, so will that be reflected in my BOP account is my question. Got the question? Okay, yes. So introduced in 2004 by RBI, all resident individuals, including minors, are allowed to freely remit up to $2,50,000, and permissible for any permissible current or capital account transaction or a combination of both. So that is what you have to remember. You can twist, you may say only current account there or only capital account. No, it's a combination. There are no restrictions on the frequency of remittances under it. See, always, if you talk to HDFC Bank also, whenever somebody is sending money from US, they're more than eager to convert it and give. But whenever you want to outward remit incentives are very less for banks also. Outward remit means you are sending dollars out. Okay, so that's not, because whenever foreign exchange is moving out of India, RBI is not so happy. RBI is not so. Whenever foreign exchange is coming into India, RBI is more than happy. This is the whole logic. That is the reason always outward remittances, there will be some kind of regulations and restrictions under the LRS scheme. Okay. See, everybody was talking UK free trade agreement is there anyhow. So US, we not worry about US and things like that. No, because US is one of the largest trading partner. So people think like, okay, UK is there. UK is just there. UK has its own problems nowadays. UK, I'll not talk much about it, but there are a lot of issues, economic issues also going on right now in the European countries, right? So, of course, now here, what is that we have to understand? So, conclusion of FTA after 3 years of formal talks. Here, under this conclusion of FTA, few words we'll try to understand, which are purely factual here, very simple and factual here. One is, you can find here, both countries agreed to negotiate a reciprocal double contributions convention. Reciprocal double contributions convention. Okay, so this is something related to social security agreement. Suppose there is an employee who is working in India, but temporarily has gone to UK. Okay, now social security, there is some amount which I have to pay from my salary. Company contributes a little, you contribute a little. Now, is it that you contribute in both the countries? Or is it that I can only contribute in one country? This is what is the discussion here with respect to double contributions convention. Double contributions convention related to social security. It will support business and trade by ensuring that employees moving between both the countries and their employers, okay, so will only be employer, because some contribution comes from the employee, some contribution comes from the employer, okay. So will only be liable to pay social security contributions in one country only at a time. This is what is understanding. This is what is the main understanding of double contributions convention. So though I'm moving here and there, now I should be paying only, in one country I'll be paying for the social security, okay. And it will include employees temporarily working in other countries for up to 3 years. This is one more important observation. This applies, double contribution convention applies to only those, provided you are working there up to 3 years, right? And then it will not affect individuals' right to access benefits from the country in which they pay social security contributions. So, though I'm there, I'm paying social security contribution here, that means something, I have to be able to access the contributions which I have done. Okay, so that is what it is. Or the requirement to pay UK immigration health surcharge. In UK, there are a lot of charges. Okay, so it is not an exception to payment of UK immigration health surcharge. That means that continues, you have to pay that. This is not an exception with respect to paying UK immigration health surcharge, that has to be paid. This is what is the understanding. Okay, so that has to be paid. Now, key highlights of the agreement here. Okay, so one is it eases mobility for Indian professionals, moving, and then zero duty market access. So Indian exports will enjoy zero duty access to UK market, covering almost 100% of the trade value. So this is one. And allowed participation of UK businesses in procurement. That means UK businesses will be able to compete for a wide variety of goods, services, and for majority of central government and state-owned enterprises. That means whenever tenders are coming in India, okay, so recently government is also thinking whether to open Chinese companies' participation with respect to defense. This is one news. That means if Chinese companies participate, companies like BHEL may not get the contract. They are efficient. I'm not saying BHEL is bad. I know it, I work there. Okay, so, but you can't compete with Chinese companies. That means probably nowadays the contracts, most of the contracts BHEL is taking, Bell is taking, BEL is taking. But if Chinese companies, so here you're talking about UK companies participating in the contracts which are released by the central or the state governments, state-owned enterprises. I hope it is clear. This is what it is. Now, talking about integration. Okay, so two things which you will observe here. Of course, this you will read in other subjects also. This is, as you are moving up the ladder, your economic integration is becoming wider. So, initially we talk about preferential trade agreements, which are generally based on positive list concept. Suppose if I'm saying India, Thailand, PTA, what is the meaning of preferential trade agreement? I'm coming up with a list of items with respect to which the tariffs will be low. So here, two things here. One is concept of positive list. Another one is concept of negative list. Okay, so early harvest scheme. Okay, initially to promote relations between two countries, you come up with that. Or when we talk about preferential trade agreements, PTAs, okay, so what you do is you generally come up with positive list. What is the meaning of positive list? Let's say I'm putting 4 items in this list. And the trade barriers, custom duties will be almost negligible only with respect to the items which I have mentioned in this basket. That is called as positive list. That means the agreement is applicable only, positive list, no, agreement is applicable only on this basket. With all other items other than those mentioned in the basket, then the tariffs will be regular tariffs only. Negative list. Suppose India-Sri Lanka free trade agreement. There was one problem earlier also. That was something like, we mentioned India-Sri Lanka free trade agreement. We said we are following negative list. That means we are going to reduce tariffs on almost all the items except those mentioned in this basket. That is what is negative list. That means the agreement is not applicable only on those few items which I'm mentioning in the basket. Other than that, all other items, the tariffs will be less. What India did, India put tea here in the negative list with Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka was crying. Sri Lanka was saying, we are good in few things. One is tea. But India said, India has put that in the negative list. That means if we are buying Sri Lankan tea, we will put very high tariffs. Sri Lanka is good in very few things. Agriculture, tourism, and that's it. Nothing else. Got the point right? Okay. So this is what is the concept of negative list. For example, we have come up with negative list with respect to service tax after 2011-12. Service tax, we have come up with, earlier service tax used to have positive list. If you know service tax, which came up around 94-95, after the 88th constitutional amendment, that time we only came up with service tax on few items. Only 3 in fact, like share broking was one. Telecom was one. And then general insurance. Only 3 items service tax was levied. This is called as what? Positive list. Positive list means what? Only these 3, there is service tax. Other than these, no service tax. And slowly every year we said, we'll add one more in the positive list. Okay, but after 2011-12, what we said? Negative list. All items will have service tax. All services will have service tax, except those which are mentioned in this basket. This is called as what list? Negative list. Because of that, service tax revenues have exponentially increased after 2011-12. This is what is the logic of positive and negative list. So here, when we talk about these agreements also, first thing is when you talk about PTAs, so here basically you will only come up with positive list, agreed. You will reduce the tariffs only on agreed kind of goods. Okay, and then slowly you will shift on negative list concept when you touch FTA, and then slowly the integration moves up. So sometimes it moves to the extent where those which are part of a certain entity, they have uniform tariffs whenever they're doing trade with other countries. One more important observation here. Okay, so here, when we talk about free trade agreements, 2 or more countries or trading blocs that agree to reduce or eliminate customs tariff and non-tariff barriers on substantial trade between them. This is the whole logic. That means the tariffs and custom duties would be reduced. It covers trade in goods, trade in services, and also areas like IPRs, intellectual property rights. But one important observation here is, if India and Sri Lanka have come up with free trade agreement, tariffs are less between India and Sri Lanka. But that will not be considered when you are talking about the concept of MFN in WTO. MFN is what? Most favored nation. So most favored nation logic is part of WTO. There are some exceptions to the concept of most favored nation. What is the meaning of most favored nation? Suppose India has, see, the whole logic is once you become member of WTO, by default, generally, the expectation is you give MFN status to as many countries as possible. India gave MFN status to Pakistan also in 95. Pakistan did not give us MFN status. So India has given MFN status to Pakistan means all those member countries in WTO, if I'm reducing the tariff for any other country, suppose I'm following 10% tariff with most of the countries to whom I've given MFN status. So if I've reduced the tariff from 12% to 10% to one of the MFN country, automatically it will also apply to Pakistan also, because I'll not treat Pakistan different, or I'll not treat Pakistan as an alien nation. This is how MFN operates. I hope you're able to get this. Okay, so MFN means most favored nation. In fact, you will not have any most favored nation. Okay, so whatever tariff that applies to one MFN country will automatically, India's reduced tariff with one country, automatically it will apply to all MFN countries by default. Is that okay? So India had a 12% tariff with respect to selling a particular product with MFN countries. India has reduced it to 10. Then automatically that will apply to all MFN countries, including Pakistan. That is the meaning. I hope it is clear. Okay. But at the same time, if Pakistan has not given MFN status, means that is not. India has revoked MFN status to Pakistan because of the terrorist activities recently. Okay. Now what you will check is, there was one case related to Nestle. Nestle is from Switzerland. Okay. Swiss chocolates. Okay. So there was this current affair discussion about Supreme Court also interfered with respect to MFN logic related to taxing. Okay, so that you will go back and check once. Okay, go back and check once. What is this issue? That was there 6 months back, or 1 year back, or 8 months back. I don't remember exactly. But what is the issue? What happened with respect to Nestle? Okay. Now, one more important observation. India, Sri Lanka, outside WTO, we have signed FTA. That will not apply to. That means that tariffs will not be applicable in WTO. This is what it is. FTAs act as an exception to most favored nation principle of WTO. This is outside WTO. India and Sri Lanka are doing trade at 0% tariff based on bilateral agreement. This is a bilateral free trade agreement outside WTO. This 0% will not be applicable to all MFN countries in WTO. That will not be applicable. This is outside WTO. That is what is the meaning of exception. Are you able to get this? Exception to the principle of MFN principle of WTO. Exception to the principle of WTO. Okay, or if suppose there are regional groupings like RCEP, you have ASEAN, you have SAARC. So regional groupings or bilateral agreements, maybe these countries may have lower tariffs. That does not mean that will be applicable to all the MFN countries in WTO. No, because this is outside WTO. These are exceptions to WTO. FTA is an exception. Bilateral agreements are an exception to MFN concept in WTO. Is that okay? That is what is the meaning of that line. I hope you have understood that, right? Let's move forward. See here, India European Free Trade Association Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement comes into effect. Okay, came into effect from 1st October 2025. Okay. Now what are the things which you should understand here? So one important observation here. There is first time you have a binding commitment. You know what is a binding commitment, right? Binding commitment of $100 billion investment and 1 million direct jobs to be created in next 15 years. This is a very important observation there. It's like a binding commitment. Generally, there is nothing like binding commitments which are signed. So here it's more like a binding commitment that $100 billion investment should be brought in, and approximately around 1 million direct jobs should be created in next 15 years. This is one important thing which you should understand, which is little different from earlier agreements. Okay. Another important thing which you should remember here is, this is what it says. It's the first free trade agreement signed by India to incorporate a binding commitment, which is specifically talking about how much investment should be coming and how much of job creation you will be doing by 2040. Is that okay? And the countries which are there in this agreement are Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland. And the largest trading partner with India there is Norway. And one more important thing, this is, when we talk about this agreement, it covering 100% of non-agricultural products. It's very important. They are not like Trump. Okay, so here if you observe, EFTA offers substantial access covering 100% of non-agricultural products. That means some protections you want for agriculture, you can carry the protections with respect to agriculture. Okay, so this is what you should understand. Services, the pact stimulates exports in IT, business, services, education, etc. Okay, now even when it comes to certificates and when you study somewhere, basically my degree should be valid elsewhere also. Okay, so when we talk about experience and even education, etc. So here if you observe, it enables a mutual recognition agreement in professional services such as nursing, chartered accountancy, and architecture. This is one more important observation there. Okay, and chemicals and allied products, zero or reduced tariffs on more than 95% of India's exports. Okay, so these are some things here when we talk about this EFTA. So one is which are the countries which are there. Second is the binding commitment which we have of 100 billion within another 15 years and the number of jobs that are going to be created. So this is first time you've talked something. And third important observation, basically agriculture wise, if I want some protection, that can be ensured. And there is something like a mutual recognition agreement between them. Okay, this I have put student read. That means you can go back and read this one. So, okay, so what to read, I'll tell you. See here, this is about something like export promotion mission. Okay, anyhow, when I'm talking about industries, I'll talk about micro, small and medium enterprise. See, this is last year, there were some themes in the budget. And one of the theme in the budget last year was micro, small and medium enterprises. Why? Because already the investment criteria, the turnover criteria for MSMEs have been changed in the budget. So any changes in the budget, anything that is changed is very important. I'll talk about that. So when you see also which schemes to read more, there is always this confusion, no? Now there's so many schemes. Are all the schemes important for the exam? Everything is current affair. Actually, in our agriculture, there's nothing new. They have agriculture, whatever they have written is because something has happened for 10 years. It's been 10 years after launch, 5 years after launch. Okay, so that is the reason they are there. Otherwise, there's nothing significantly, there's nothing like a change that happened that we have written those schemes in the book. If you see, we'll talk about that anyhow. Okay, so nothing like a significant change. But because of 10 years of a particular scheme, everybody thought Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan will be asked. Therefore, UPSC did not ask. Okay, so everybody thought 10 years of Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. So everybody was thinking this question will come definitely. What does Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan cover? Okay, in mains there's no 100 years is there now. Now let's see, this topic will come in exam. Okay, so nowadays UPSC is putting its brain to check where something that's not publicly available will give question related to that. So this is the main objective. Something which is silent in the newspaper, not so visible. Let's try a question from there. This is what they're trying to do. Fine, now see here, this is, later on you'll go back and check what is this export promotion mission. Okay, so basically this is basically a digitally driven framework for export promotion. We're trying to target exports, and they gave a timeline also of 6 years from 25-26 to 30-31. And they have set a budget around 25,000 crores. Okay, and there are two things here you can see. One is called as the financial support, which is there, Niryat Protsahan, and then you have something called as non-financial support. Non-financial support will be to improve your competitiveness or marketing capabilities, etc. So implementing agency, DGFT, Directorate General of Foreign Trade. Okay, so here. Now some questions earlier that were asked is, what is the proportion of exports? So Indian export sector contributes to 21% in overall GDP, 24-25, and 45% of India's total exports are contributed by MSME. But India's share in global exports is very, very less. India's share. There was this question asked already. If you go back and check whether this database question was, but you can easily identify seeing the number. So India's contribution to global exports of goods and services is around only 2.5%. Okay, so this is some things which you will try to remember. And services export historical high, 387 billion in 24-25. Because services tariff lines are less, obviously. And India is also good with respect to services. These are the two things which, okay, so, and then also there is this credit guarantee scheme for exporters. Okay, so schemes, actually we have a separate class for schemes, which we will, that's a separate class that's there for schemes. We can't discuss all the schemes here, but these are of course previous schemes based questions. Okay, just to tell you that, okay, there will be some current affairs questions. Government wants, why there are scheme-based questions? Because government wants to tell that I have come up with this scheme and you should know about it. Simple logic. Okay, some questions can be, these are logic-based questions. Okay, for example, logic-based questions means you can easily identify which one is for working capital, which is for which is a fixed capital investment. For example, tractors, harvesters, mini trucks, etc. You can see post-harvest expenses, construction of family house, setting up of cold storage. This is all long-term and capital expenditure types. So this is something like without knowing the scheme, you can mark. Okay, there are some where you're asked where it falls. Okay, so then there are certain schemes regarding acts. Okay, and there are schemes like Digital India Plan, etc. So whenever you are looking at a scheme, okay, so you will keep two things in mind. So it's very difficult to remember everything when we are talking about schemes. Okay, so what you should do, if in the budget, whatever is mainly focused is very important, that is one. Okay, so for example, MSME is focused, agriculture is focused. So everybody said Makana, Makana, therefore no question. Got the point, right? So this is something which you should understand. If everybody is talking about Makana, there will be a question on rice or wheat and rice production. Because Makana board, everybody knows it's in Bihar. And so therefore that question will not be asked. This is very clear cut. That is there. But budget becomes important. MSME, what are the changes? What are the new changes which, and any budget allocations are changed. For example, MG and REG, I don't want to talk much about it, the name change or whatever. Okay, so, so there is a change. There is a change. Now in the budget allocations last few years, they are reducing allocations to MG Narega, or they are increasing the allocations to certain schemes, or they have removed it from one department, pushed it into something else. These are called as what? Any change. So that is there, that becomes important for us. Then whenever we look at a scheme, one, nodal agency, that is what you have to see, which is the nodal agency which is implementing the scheme. Second is, who are the beneficiaries of that particular scheme. For example, if I say Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Okay, so the beneficiary there is only, you talk about land owning farmer. Land owning farmer. If you don't have land, then you are like a tenant farmer, you are not eligible for Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. So basically, who are the beneficiaries of a particular scheme? Okay, so for example, when I talk about MG Narega, all rural households. Okay, and then another important thing, objective of the scheme. Objective of the scheme. So nodal agency, objective, beneficiaries, and any change specific. Change can be in budget allocation, change can be change in ministry or department. So any kind of major change becomes important, even the name change. You should, that means there's something in it which government wants you to know. Better know. Government is telling you better know. Okay, so, so sometimes you read schemes and you forget common sense, so that's no. For example, that is basically Kisan credit card. You don't know the scheme, but you know something like, long term, what is long term, what is short term. You should be able to identify that. For that, you don't need any kind of fixed knowledge. So many times you cram schemes and you forget, you do basic errors in the exam, therefore one or two questions will go wrong. Okay, so I'll not talk about schemes here, but any of these agriculture, we'll see. I hope it is clear. So that is what you should be doing. Going off. This slide is colorful. Okay, so but there were questions in CDS on these graphs. So CDS, CAPF you find. In our exam, only there was one question on inferior good. That too 4 years back. Okay. So first of all, what are these? You're talking about regular law of demand. When I say regular law of demand only talks about two things. One, quantity demanded, and price. You can't put anything else when I'm saying regular law of demand. You can't put income. When I say regular law of demand always talks about price on y-axis and quantity demanded. And you know that you have always a rightward sloping graph. Whenever price, so here downward sloping. So whenever the price is changing on this line, or whenever the demand is changing on this line, so when demand is changing on this line, it is purely because of one single factor, that is price. But demand can be affected because of many other factors. What are the other factors that can affect demand? One is price, another one is income. There can be substitutes, there can be complementary items, there can be preferences. So there can be many other factors that can affect the demand. So if I'm talking about demand for pizzas and burgers in Karol Bagh, okay, suppose parents have sent more money to children here. They said 15,000 more, exam is coming, so you please take this 15,000, enjoy your life. Okay, so that was the sentence used, and they sent 15,000 to everybody. Everybody's pocket, 15,000 has come. Now students obviously are students. They said, yes, we will reduce our stress by using junk food. And they, so you started eating pizzas and burgers. And because of that, you find that there is a rightward shift of the demand graph. Rightward shift of demand graph. That means for the same price, there is more demand. For the same price is more demand. For the same price is more demand. This is called as rightward shift of the demand graph. It is indicating favorable demand. But this rightward shift of the demand graph is not because of price. It is because of some exogenous condition other than the price. If the demand is changing on this line only, you are talking about price. I hope it is clear. Are there any exceptions to the regular law of demand? Yes, there are exceptions to regular law of demand. One such good is Veblen good. Veblen is status-oriented goods. Mercedes ho gaya kaam. Okay, Veblen goods are status-oriented goods. Price itself is driving the demand, or as the price is increasing, the demand is also going up. Okay, so earlier we used to talk about gold also. As the price is going up, you find the demand is also going up. That means it is an exception to regular law of demand. It can be any fancy cars, or it is certain handbags, or whatever it is. Okay. Then another exception to regular law of demand is the Giffen goods. There is something called as Giffen's paradox. It is also an exception to regular law of demand. So whenever I say exception, so exception is always something like the graph will be different, reverse. Okay. So you will remember only few words here. Okay, few words. Okay, one is Veblen. Okay, status-oriented exception to regular law of demand. Another one is Giffen. Giffen goods, for them, obviously, when we look at the graph would be an exception to regular law of demand. Exception to regular law of demand. If I'm taking quantity demanded and price. Okay. Giffen is a subset of inferior goods. It's a subset of inferior goods. But when I say exception to regular law of demand, you only talk about these two. You don't talk about inferior goods as such, because the Giffen goods, which are part of the inferior good category, only display that aspect. Are you able to get this? Okay. So now, inferior goods, basically what you observe is, as we'll talk about that anyhow in the charts, it is there. Okay. Then all other things remaining constant, the supplier wants to supply more at higher prices. All other things remaining constant, the supplier wants to supply more material at higher prices. Okay. So if I'm talking about price and quantity supplied. So in CDS, the question was, perfectly inelastic supply. perfectly inelastic supply. So if there is a regular law of demand and there is a perfectly inelastic supply. So what does that mean? The regular law of demand, basically the graph is like this. Okay, there is perfectly inelastic supply. What is this perfectly inelastic supply? That means if it is perfectly elastic, how will the graph be? Perfectly elastic supply parallel to x-axis. Shopkeeper is selling a chocolate at 10 rupees. Up to infinity he will sell. But if you change the price by a little also, he'll say, I will reduce the supply to 0. That means the supply is completely dependent on price. Perfectly inelastic supply. Is that okay? Whatever may be the price, I'm least bothered. I'm going to supply. Irrespective of the price, I'm going to supply so much of chocolates only, so many chocolates, whatever, irrespective of the price. That means price is not affecting my supply, irrespective of price. Is that okay? Understood? So one is perfectly elastic supply, perfectly inelastic, perfectly inelastic. Okay. So that's all. Very simple. You should know a few words. One is regular law of demand. Okay. And then rightward shift of demand graph, talking about favorable demand, leftward shift, unfavorable demand. Then what are Veblen goods? What are inferior? What are Giffen? Giffen goods do not have readily available substitute. Though they are inferior, there is no readily available substitute in Giffen goods. Okay. So here you can see there is some how inflation and good type affect price elasticity. See, when I say price elasticity, what is elastic demand? Proportionate change in demand to proportionate change in price is greater than 1. That means price greatly affects the demand. Change in price greatly affects the demand. So when I say elastic demand, inelastic demand, what about necessities? Necessities generally have inelastic demand. It need not be perfectly inelastic. It need not be perfectly inelastic, but necessities have inelastic demand. See, that means when I say elastic demand, this is elastic demand, inelastic demand, inelastic demand. Necessities, suppose rice, salt, though the price increases of salt prices increase, but I don't drastically reduce my intake unless until I'm a BP patient or something. Got the point, right? Just because the price of salt has come down, it's not that I'll stock my house with salt. Because necessities generally are less responsive to the changes in the price. They change by a little extent, lower extent than the change in the price. The change is not much for necessities. It's not perfectly, but the change is less. I hope it is clear. But for manufacturing goods, normal manufacturing goods, basically, there can be something called as elastic demand. Elastic demand. That means price has an impact. You can easily postpone them. They are not necessities for you anymore. So therefore, you can postpone them to subsequent months. You need not buy it immediately. So the whole logic of discussion there in those charts is all this only. Okay, so if you look at, so here if you see, if the necessities are there, so if you see necessities, food, fuel, etc., so you observe that the graph is not perfectly inelastic, but you can see the graph is somewhat inelastic. This is what you observe. Okay, so here it is quantity demanded. It's not great change here, quantity demanded. Price is changing a lot, but the demand you see. Okay, this shows more of inelastic nature. Inelastic nature. If it is going like this, it is showing more of elastic nature. Are you able to get this? So here if you see, You can see hyper elastic. Okay, price has a huge impact on demand. Price has a huge impact on demand. Price has a huge impact on demand. You can see this is the price, this is the demand, this is the price. You see this is the demand. Huge impact on demand. But here you don't find that for necessities. At this price, let's say this is the demand. At this price also you observe the demand is this much. Okay, there's a slight change in demand. You're able to get this inelastic. This is for necessities. Okay, so, but sometimes you can observe here, if in necessities also, if there is a premium brand and then cheaper alternative, what he's trying to say is, though the demand is inelastic, there can be a brand switch. That is what he's telling, nothing significant there. Brand switch can be there. Okay, rice you are buying, but I may shift to a cheaper rice, no more basmati. Got the point right? Yes. Luxury, discretionary, of course, luxury. Demand perspective for a rich man is different. Here it is not about rich man's behavior. It is basically demand for certain products like this. Extremely rich man's behavior is not affected much by price. Ambani madam is not affected much by price. But here this is not about madam's behavior. It is about normal behavior of people when they are buying such products which are like, you can say, discretionary. Washing machine is there, I want to buy. Okay, so madam has removed it from 28% and it has been brought to 18. So I may buy it now because it is cheaper. But if it still remains in 28% slab of GST, I'll buy it after the budget. Who knows, madam says I'll get it down to 12, no, 5%, let's say. Madam will not get it down to 5. But that means I can postpone it also. Okay, so that is what you see here. Sensitive to price, sensitive, clothed, vacations. Vacations. People stopped going to Goa and started moving to other places outside which are cheaper right now. So if I take vacation to Goa here, this will fit in the last 1 year. Got the point right? Similarly here, behavior during inflation. Obviously during inflation, these are not necessities. The price is too high, postpone. Huge fall in demand. Huge fall, elastic. This is what it is. Okay, durable goods, cars and appliances and, okay, so all that can also be postponed. Yeah. Life-saving drugs. Huh. First of all, life-saving drug, many life-saving drugs we can't afford. It is a super luxury. Got the point? Of course, though I beg, borrow, still I can't afford certain cancer drugs. That's different. But if the price of the drug is a little decent, then obviously that is a necessity. But in India, most of these patented drugs are not cancer patient, 8 lakhs for drugs every month. And these are life-saving drugs. What to do? You can't do anything, just pray to God. Seriously. Seriously. This is the situation. Unless and until you have a very strong insurance policy backing you. Okay. Government cannot give 1 crore for a person's treatment. Of course, there is provision. There is a provision, but you have to get it from PMO office. Again, you have to get it from there, means again you need to have influence. Everybody will say, I have cancer now. This is India. Huh? Sanction it from PM fund now. Not so easy. But of course, there is a provision. Huh? There is a provision for white card holders. Sanctioning should be done. But the process, I think you know how it is. That's the reason we all want to be bureaucrats. Got the point. If everything is streamlined and systematic, then why will I write this exam? Got the point, right? That is one of the important factors that is a driving force behind you taking this exam also, if I'm not wrong. One of the few factors I said. I did not say the main factor. Okay, one of the few factors. Now, anyhow, that's on the lighter side. Okay, I think it is clear. This is what it is. So, few words which you have to remember. Madam said life-saving drugs in 0% GST. Forget about GST. As it is, the drug, patented drug is somewhere at the top. Okay, so forget about the tax there. Okay, now, okay, there are three indices. Okay, one, this is still not pushed in. Okay, so two things here. First of all, we'll talk about, one is we have WPI and another one is CPI. So when I'm saying index, why are we building an index? We are building an index so that measurement or it is a convenience. And one more thing, in UPSC, there were, in CDS, there was this question about 2024 or 25 about GDP deflator. Okay, so when I talk about, so you can measure inflation using GDP deflator, or you can measure using some price index. What are these price indices? Like one is we talk about CPI, WPI, okay? And now there is mention that we will replace WPI with PPI. Replace. We have not done it still. We have not done it still, but we want to replace WPI with PPI. This is the discussion right now. So in CPI, again, we have something like CPI agriculture labor, CPI industrial worker, then CPI rural labor, and then you also have CPI combined. CPI combined. CPI combined. CPI combined is what we are using for RBI's monetary policy. So this is nothing but CPI urban plus CPI rural. Okay. Now, GDP deflator. So the question was, it takes the measurement of GDP deflator assumes a fixed basket of commodities. This is what was the question they have given. It assumes a fixed, so, but it doesn't take a fixed basket of commodities. Which one will take a fixed basket of commodities? It is these price indices. This was the question they have asked. What is the meaning of fixed basket? That means here, the basket is, you're taking, the items in the basket are fixed. The items in the basket are fixed when we talk about these indices. Okay, so for example, if I'm talking CPI combined, we take a box and in that box we are putting 6 categories of items. And in that 6 categories of items, you're saying food and beverages will give maximum weight. This is a fixed basket. This is not a fixed basket. How do you arrive at GDP deflator? GDP deflator is nothing but nominal GDP divided by real GDP multiplied by 100. Nominal GDP at current price, GDP at base year prices. Now they want to change the base year to 22, 23. This is the discussion. Otherwise, so one more thing which you will go back and read is why IMF has given us C grade. Of course, they'll not ask. I don't think they should be asking why they have given it C grade, because this is showing something negative. Okay, so why? But some things you will understand by reading that. Why IMF has given C grade with respect to our GDP calculation. Okay. I don't want one factor, no. I want 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. What kind of discrepancy? Okay, so what is exactly the discrepancy? Discrepancy in data collection is English. What kind of discrepancy? Why there is discrepancy? You will check. Okay, so that is one. Base year is, of course, everybody knows base year there. Then what is the problem between two different methods? One is the production method, you have released the data, but when you look at the expenditure method, there is huge gap with respect to my numbers. Okay, so you'll check that. So you'll see, properly see why they have given. So if I have to select 3 major factors, why IMF has given me C grade. Earlier, before last year, IMF said India is a growth spot. It was praising India. But what happened now suddenly? That I want you all to check. Is it real or is it US influence? Okay. Fine. No, you can't say that. There are some issues in the calculation also, but not as many issues as IMF is talking, so go and find out. Now this is GDP deflator, right? Now talking about these indices. So for prelims, what are the things which I have to remember? Now come back. Okay, so here CPI index, CPI, now CPI, one is CPI agriculture, labor, rural, labor. Here this is Labor Bureau released by. Base years have been changed now. Okay, so that is one thing which you will remember. It's not 1986-87 anymore. The base year is 2019. Okay, industrial worker already 2 years back or 1.5 years back, they have changed it to 2016. Industrial worker, CPI industrial worker, base year is 2016. Okay, agriculture labor, rural labor, here you have changed the base year to 2019. That is one change which you will remember. That is there in the slide in our magazine also. They've written that. They've written 2019, I think. They have written that. Okay, then CPI combined. CPI combined. Okay, NSO calculates. And this is CPI urban plus CPI rural. CPI urban plus CPI rural, which we are using it for policy making. So this is our headline inflation. When I say headline and core inflation. So headline inflation is including the volatile aspects, including food and oil. Headline is what is used for something used for policy making. That is the reason headline. So earlier WPI was our headline. Then we have shifted to CPI. And in CPI, when we are talking about headline, means it includes the volatile aspects like food and oil. When I say core inflation, then there is no volatile aspects, exclude volatile aspects like. There was a conflict also last 6 months back or 1 year back. The conflict was the economic advisor wants to remove food for policy making. He wanted to remove food in the basket for policy making, but RBI head did not like it. They were upset. Government upset means he can't continue. Okay, so he said people perceive inflation through food. People perceive inflation through food, so therefore food should be there in the basket. The problem earlier was food prices are always sticky. It goes up, it will not come down after going up. Tomato goes like that only. Okay, because why? Because suppose there is a trouble for the farmer to sell tomatoes or prices of tomato have gone down, farmer will not produce tomatoes anymore in the subsequent cropping season. Then that is the reason why it jumps up and then it stays there for a very long period. And other supply chain problems are also there. Okay, so this is one important observation. Now coming to weights here. So when I look at weights in CPI, when I'm comparing CPI and WPI, one important observation, maximum weight in CPI index is for food and beverage. That means, okay, CPI base year also changed to 2024 and GDP 23-24 in use. Okay. So here if you see, when we talk about CPI here, CPI combined, this is CPI combined. CPI combined means it includes CPI urban plus CPI rural, both. So here you have 6 categories of items. Everything put together is 100. Okay, so here food and beverage, pan, tobacco, clothing, etc., services is also there. So one problem in WPI index is you don't have services in the WPI index. This is one problem in WPI, that services are not included, and services are a major chunk of GDP. Major chunk of GDP. So in CPI, you have services also, you have goods also. I hope it is clear. Okay. Now, one more important observation is, are the weights same for CPI rural and CPI urban? The weights are different. That means if the food prices are going up, then CPI rural will go up faster in comparison to CPI urban, because the weight of food, if you observe, is more in the CPI rural. So this is a table which is showing that the weights, this is combined is 45, but when I take rural and urban separately, these are the weights. So that means CPI rural, CPI urban, the weights can be different. One more question can be, can WPI inflation be greater than CPI inflation? Yes, it is. It was earlier, okay, during 2020, 21, 22 period. you find WPI inflation higher than CPI. Reason being, because the weights of commodities and items in WPI is completely different from the weights in CPI. The weightage is different in WPI index and the weightage is different in CPI. Okay. Now what is government talking about? Government is saying we want to change WPI with PPI. PPI is what? Producer Price Index. So this is the discussion basically here. The discussion is you want to change WPI with PPI. Is that okay? That means there are some problems. There are some problems in WPI and therefore they want to change it to PPI. Is that okay? So what are the problems in WPI? Okay. Now a few important observations here. So one is a producer, then you have wholesaler, and then you have retailer. So if I'm measuring prices at the retail level, it is retail inflation or my CPI. When you're measuring prices at the wholesale level, you're calling it as WPI. When you're measuring inflation at the producer level means farm gate. At farm gate, that means there are no taxes in producer price index. There are no taxes in PPI. Okay, so here, see here. One main problem in WPI, I'll tell you what are the problems in WPI first of all. First problem in WPI is services is not included. This is one problem. In PPI, services is also there. Services is included in PPI. Is that okay? Second thing, there are no taxes in PPI. There are no taxes. That means exactly you will know the prices based on production costs. There are no taxes. Now, in CPI, obviously there are taxes, but WPI also, there are certain taxes that are going into production. Suppose there are some aspects which are going into production, these taxes are there. See, even transportation, etc. will also be there when we talk about wholesale price index, because the goods are moving, let's say, from the producer to the wholesaler. There is also transportation cost included. And when we talk about WPI, production related taxes are also there. Some of the taxes are also there when we talk about WPI. Are you able to get this? But when we talk about PPI, there are no taxes completely. Third important observation is, in WPI, there is a problem of double counting. What is the meaning of double counting? So here when we see WPI basket, so WPI talks about what? Primary articles, fuel and power, manufacturing goods. Suppose let's talk about WPI cotton. So cotton has become cotton yarn, and from there it has become shirt. Okay. So when I look at raw cotton, now raw cotton, if I'm putting it in the primary article. But when I put the manufactured shirt, let's say somewhere here. Are you able to get this? Now if the cotton prices have gone up, because of that, yarn prices have also gone up. Because of yarn prices going up, finished good prices or the shirt prices have gone up. But the shirt price increase is also because of increase in cotton prices. That means what is happening here is this cotton prices increasing is having an impact in all the three levels. This is the problem in WPI. Big problem. This is called as double counting. There is no separation here. There is no separation of input and output price increase. Okay, so when we talk about, for example, if I talk about wheat prices have gone up exponentially. Because of that, again, when we manufacture wheat biscuits will come here. Okay, so when you manufacture wheat biscuit prices have also gone up. So, but already there is this increase in inflation which is already reflected here. Again, that is the same wheat is having an impact with respect to my wheat biscuit prices also. This wheat increase in price of wheat is getting calculated or included twice in my WPI calculation. This is one more problem in WPI, which is called as double counting. Is that okay? Okay, so in PPI, one benefit in PPI is input and output separate inflation numbers are given. That means what? They will give by what percent cotton prices have gone up this year. When I'm calculating with last year, this year, let's say what rate cotton prices have gone up, at what rate yarn prices have gone up, what rate the shirt price have gone up. So what is the difference here? I exactly know from last year to this year, what is the increase of cotton price? What is the increase of yarn price? What is the increase of shirt prices? So I can tabulate separately that the price increase is because of what? Because inputs and outputs are classified separately with respect to their increase in prices when it comes to PPI, Producer Price Index. That is a basic understanding, very basic understanding why WPI leads to. So in PPI, what are you doing? In PPI, you are giving input in price increase separately, output price increase separately, everything is clearly codified. Okay, so because of that logic, I can exactly pinpoint and calculate whether the price is, I can remove the increase of cotton inflation, while I am calculating the yarn. And then same thing when I can do with respect to shirt. That means twice cotton price can be excluded. So this benefit is there where? This benefit is there in PPI, which is not there in WPI. See, whole logic is WPI is going to be replaced with PPI, still not replaced. So what are the main differences? Here, there is no services. Here we have services, first thing. Okay. Second thing here, okay, so here there are some taxes which are going into production. Here there are no taxes. This is the second difference. Third, here there is higher chance of double counting because you're only talking about primary articles, manufacturing and fuel. That's it. That means there is no separate classification with respect to input and outputs there. Okay, so therefore, here there is double counting. Here, this PPI will tell you the prices of production purely because of production or at the farm gate. And since separately input and outputs are given, therefore that double counting can be reduced to some extent. Fourth, this is the international practice. This is not the international practice. UN accounting system, if I talk about, it is you have PPI methodology, but you don't have WPI. That is also one more reason. So you need to be aligning yourself with international standards. So the things to be remembered here, change in base years for two things, okay, and then, so for policy making or inflation targeting, which inflation is used? CPI combined. RBI is always talking about inflation target 4 plus or minus 2, all that. That is related to CPI combined. CPI combined is CPI urban plus CPI rural. There were earlier previous question, WPI can also be greater than CPI. There is a chance that WPI can be greater than CPI. And suppose a particular product price are going up, it can be reflected differently in WPI, reflected differently in CPI because the weightage is different. In WPI, major weight is for manufacturing. In WPI, major weight is for manufacturing. In CPI, major weight is for food and beverages. Okay. Enough. Next one. Multi-dimensional poverty index. Okay. Now here, with respect to poverty, deprivation of basic requirements for leading a dignified life. This is what is called as absolute poverty. India, we are still stuck with absolute poverty discussions only. Okay, we are still stuck with absolute poverty. So when we try to measure poverty, we use something called as one head count ratio, HCR. HCR, how do we calculate head count ratio? It is the number of BPL in the numerator divided by total population multiplied by 100. Number of BPL divided by total population multiplied by 100. Let's say out of 100, 20 are below poverty line. That means my head count ratio is 20%. That's all. So what is head count ratio indicating? It is talking about incidence of poverty. Incidence means how many are poor. It is not telling me how poor they are. It is not telling me how poor they are. This is something very important. So it is not telling anything about intensity. It is only talking about incidence. Incidence is how many are poor. For example, if I'm saying this is my poverty line. Okay. There may be few who are here. There may be few who are here. Okay. So now I only check. Suppose there are 8 above the poverty line. Okay. So my ratio is 2 out of 10. In this case, 10 people are there, 2 are below the poverty line, 8 are above the poverty line. Head count ratio, 20%. It is telling how many are poor. It will not tell me what is the difference between this fellow and this fellow. The pain for this fellow is more in comparison to this fellow. This is what we call it as intensity. This is not measured in head count ratio. Therefore, you have other ratios like poverty gap ratio, or you have something like squared poverty gap index, etc. Okay, so these indices, I'll not discuss these, but just to tell you, for poverty gap ratio, it will take the average per capita expenditure or income of those who are below the poverty line. And that is somewhere here, then I subtract, let's say that is 400 average. 483 minus 400 is the poverty gap. Average income of these two I'm taking, subtracting. Okay, or average income can be 300. That means the gap is wider. Here the gap is less. So government has to spend more in this case in the form of transfer payments or whatever, so that you pull those people out of poverty. This is basically called as intensity. It tells how poor they are. So this is what is poverty gap ratio. So how poor? This is called as intensity. Multidimensional poverty index takes both. It takes incidence. It also takes intensity. Suppose a statement, multidimensional poverty index only takes intensity. No, only takes incidence. No, it takes both. It takes incidence as well as intensity. I wanted to tell you that. That is the reason I had to mention this. Okay. And poverty is always more, poverty is above food calorie. Earlier, all committees were primarily talking about food calorie, but the standard poverty discussions which we do are based on the recommendations of Suresh Tendulkar committee. This was also asked in CDS. Okay, Suresh Tendulkar committee. What happened? Anything? Any doubt? Suddenly, or you know this? Okay, so Suresh Tendulkar committee's recommendation. So Suresh Tendulkar committees are basically taken as standard for poverty estimation. I hope it is clear. Okay, right now. So Suresh Tendulkar committee he also talks about taking health and education in the basket, taking health and education in the basket also. Okay, so that is one important recommendation of Suresh Tendulkar committee. This was asked in the exam. Other committees were not taking health and education in the basket. Suresh Tendulkar was taking something like health and education in the basket for estimation. Okay, now let's come to the discussion here. So multidimensional poverty, UNDP and Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative has come up with its 2025 Global Multidimensional Poverty Index report. First of all, when we talk about multidimensional poverty index, okay, so here it obviously takes both. It talks about incidence as well as intensity, both. Okay, so that is one important observation. And when we are talking about multidimensional poverty index, it is basically calculated by taking 3 different dimensions. What are the 3 different dimensions for calculating poverty? One is health. education, and living standard. The same thing which we take for our Human Development Index calculation. So taking 3 means each one will have 1 by 3 weight. Okay, and then you have 10 indicators. So in health you have 2. That means for 1 by 3 means 1/6 and 1/6. And education also you have 2, so 1/6 and 1/6. And living standards, again, you have 6 items here. So that is the reason you have 1 by 18 for each one. This is what is the important observation. When we compare with our national multidimensional poverty, okay, you have 2 more indicators. 2 more indicators. One is access to banks, another one is maternal health. So you have 12 indicators there. Here you have only 10 indicators. Is that okay? Right? Now, some facts we will try to observe here. Okay. Here, one data which says 1 billion people across 109 countries live in acute multidimensional poverty. Okay, so when we talk about India, okay, so you can see here, in 2005-06, 55.1% of people in India were poor. The share has come down to 16.4 or 16% around during this period. Okay, so that's the reason government was also saying we have almost pulled a lot of people out of multidimensional poverty. Okay, so this is one important observation there. So somebody who does not have access to at least 33% of these indicators, then they will be treated as poor, multidimensionally poor. Okay. So here if you see, Niti Aayog's multidimensional poverty index, you have 12 indicators and there are 2 more indicators included. So you should be knowing what are those 2 more indicators. One is maternal health and another one is access to banks. Okay. Yeah, I've discussed that. That is the main question I've discussed already it's there on YouTube. So now I'll not discuss that. So inequality adjusted human development. We discussed, the detailed discussion is there. Okay, that was a question paper discussion. Yeah, I know that. So that was the first question, I think, in the exam. Yeah, not now. Let's move forward. World Inequality Report 2026. See, I have one more class only. That is basically probably tomorrow your SNT starts. Okay, and I will take on Sunday. Okay, so this is the 4th class, no? So we'll. What exam? Acha, I don't know. Let's see. Whenever it is. Okay, so I don't know. I thought it should be Sunday, but let's see. It should be Sunday, probably. But you may be right. Let's see. Come back. Okay. Huh. PT is there for ancient also? Okay. Okay. I didn't knew this. Okay. Fine. World Inequality Report. Now see here, one for measuring inequality. So one is, how do we define inequality? As per UN definition, state of not being equal in terms of income, wealth, status, income, wealth, expenditure. This is economic inequality, which I am interested in. Okay, there is one more inequality which is called as social inequality. That can be because of gender, religion, okay, so region, these kind of factors. Both are important. One inequality can lead to other inequality. But in our economics discussion, we primarily talk about economic inequality. So economic inequality can lead to social inequality. Social inequality can also lead to economic inequality. So for measuring inequality, there are different ways of measuring inequalities. One, quintile ratio. Okay, then you have something called as Palma ratio. Palma ratio, here it is there, you can see Palma ratio is the share of income going to top 10% divided by income share of bottom 40. Bottom 40, not 10. Not 10. Don't get confused. If I'm taking income of top 10 and income of bottom 10, it is called as quintile. Palma ratio takes the income of top 10 divided by income of bottom 40. There's a difference between quintile, see quintile, decile, 10, 20. Are you able to get this? So here it is basically you're talking about top 10 divided by bottom 40, Palma ratio. Okay, then you have Kuznets ratio. What does Kuznets curve talk about? Okay, so Kuznets curve you would have discussed in environment also, and Kuznets curve comes up in our discussion in economics also. So here when we talk about Kuznets ratio, it measures the share of income going to the top quintiles divided by the income going to the bottom quintiles. The greater is the ratio, the greater is the inequality. So basically, when we talk about Kuznets curve also, whenever an economy is growing at a faster pace, you will observe that inequalities start increasing. Inequalities first start increasing up to a certain period, and then subsequently inequalities will subside. Okay, so here if you see, World Inequality Lab released World Inequality Report. Few observations here. Top 10% of income earners earn more than remaining 90% combined. It is common everywhere. It is common in capitalism. Okay, so top 10% of income earners earn more than remaining 90% combined. Some data. Poorest half of the global population receives less than 10% of global earnings. These are some data which we will use it in mains, not in. So when we talk about India, top 10% of the earners capture 58% of national income. So there was a previous question. If tax to GDP number increases, the ratio increases, does it indicate equitable distribution of wealth? It will not indicate equitable distribution of wealth. So just based on tax collections, you can't talk anything about equitable distribution of wealth or equitable distribution of income, because generally most of the, very less percentage of the population is in the tax ambit, and let's say only the top percentage of the population, top income getters of the population, they are earning more and they are paying more. But rest of them, most of them are in that exempted list. Most of them are below that exempted list. Then automatically our tax collections will not talk anything about equitable distribution of income. This is already a previous question that was asked long back, 10 years back. Okay, so here if you see here, India's case, top 10% of earners capture 58% of national income. Bottom 50% receive only 15% of national income. Okay, then there are two more ways of measuring inequality. One is the Lorenz curve. Here you can see Lorenz curve. Lorenz curve is a geographical representation of inequality. Okay, and then you have something called as the Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient is also, it is an arithmetic representation of inequality. Lorenz curve, and then you have Gini coefficient. Both of them, both things measure something called as inequality. Okay, so how is this Gini coefficient calculated? Okay, so this is line of perfect equality. Okay, on x-axis you have cumulative share of people. This is 10%, bottom 10%, bottom 20, bottom 50, bottom 90, bottom 99. Okay, so here, from here, this is basically from lowest to highest. What does that mean? This is basically top 1% is holding 100% of the income. Then my graph will be like this. This would be the graph. If 10% is holding 10, bottom 10 is holding 10% of income, bottom 20 is holding 20, 30 is holding 30, 40 is holding 40, 50 is holding 50, then you get this line of perfect equality, which is never possible. As simple as that. This is line of perfect equality. This is the 45-degree line, indicates perfect equality. But as and when the Lorenz curve is moving away from the line of perfect equality, it means inequality is increasing. That is what it says. Okay, as and one, this is the Lorentz curve here, this is the Lorentz curve. Now if this Lorentz curve moves like this or like this, and then the hypothetical case here, it is the top 1% holding 100%. All of them are holding nothing. Then let's say top 1% is holding 100, then my graph will become like this. This is perfect inequality. Are you able to get this? Perfect inequality. So this is how Lorentz curve is built. Now here, Lorentz curve graphically, it is a graphical representation of inequality. What does it show? Graphical representation. The more this Lorentz curve is moving away from this line of equality, it indicates that inequality is increasing. Okay. Now, how is Gini coefficient calculated? Tell me. This is B, let's say. Okay. And this is A. So, what is the Gini coefficient formula? A by A plus B. Okay. Shabash. Okay. A by A plus B. If this Lorentz curve coincides with this line of equality, this Lorentz curve is coinciding with this, that means A becomes 0. There is no A only. This area is not there. This Lorentz curve is coinciding with this line. Okay. But if this Lorentz curve is coinciding with this portion, okay, so then this will become 1. Perfect inequality. So that means Lorentz curve, when you look at Gini coefficient, it is between 0 to 1. 0 means perfect equality, 1 is basically perfect inequality. So here it shows Gini index reflects how equally income, wealth or consumption is distributed across households or individuals in a country. Okay, and value ranges from 0 to 100. A score of 0, in fact 0 to 1, you can say ratio basically. And a score of 100 or 1 basically here is talking about perfect inequality. Put it as 1 basically, 0 to 1, that's the ratio there. Is that okay? So there is this financial inclusion index. Okay, nothing significant, but few things, factual things which we'll have already underlined. What are the factual things we will focus on? Okay, so one factual thing here. Okay, so if you observe, it is designed to provide a comprehensive measure of financial inclusion. What is the purpose? Measure of financial inclusion in India. Okay, so it ranges between 0 to 100, and 100 represents full financial inclusion, 0 represents complete no financial inclusion. This is what it is. Okay, and here you can see there's no base year, released annually since 2021, and it talks about cumulative progress of all stakeholders over the years towards financial inclusion. Okay. We don't have time, but for financial inclusion, what are the things you will read later? See, financial inclusion, government has come up with certain schemes also. One was the lead bank scheme. Okay. Then 1969, you know, nationalization of banks. 1969 and 1980. Then regional rural banks. Okay, we've talked about this RRB, some one state, one RRB discussion. No, so regional rural banks, and then there was also you started focusing on cooperative banks. 1990s concept of new private banks, ICICI kind of banks, which changed the face of banking. Bankers lost respect after this period. Gone. Okay, so earlier banker was okay. Now after that, then banker chalega. So this was the attitude that developed after the new private banks came in. And then if you observe bank correspondent model, bank correspondent model is basically, bank correspondent is an intermediary between bank and public. Let's say the postman, the milkman is acting as an intermediary between the bank and, so because in rural areas, banks were not set up. Okay, so a lot of troubles there. So that is the problem. Okay, then differentiated banks, which we've mentioned already. One is your small finance banks and also Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. Okay, so like this, if you look at, of course, from the mains perspective, the whole logic changes. Like you have to, so if there's a question on financial inclusion, which are the areas I will talk about. So your PT should be used. I'll talk, on the last day, I will talk how I will use PT for mains also. Or how do I read current affairs, all that we'll see in the last class. Okay, so, but definitely when we look at financial inclusion, in spite of doing so much, okay, from 1960s onwards, there was this question already asked, lead bank scheme was already asked. Okay, so in one district, one bank will be set up, which will be given the responsibility in terms of focusing on financial inclusion. So old previous question already asked. So like this, if you see, financial inclusion is a very important topic for both prelims as well as mains. It's also a very important area under inclusive growth. Is that okay? Right. So differentiated bank, Nachiket More committee, etc. That is how it is. Okay. So now here, see here, financial inclusion index, one, no base here. And how are you? There are three sub indices. One, access, two, usage, three, quality. Okay. So I've marked this because there are more indicators or more weight is given to usage. That is the reason. So representing the demand side of financial inclusion, demand side, it measures how frequently individuals engage with financial infrastructure. Example, UPI transaction volumes. Are able to get this? Today, digitalization has led to increase in financial inclusion. Also, payment banks also have facilitated financial inclusion. Okay. Also, you will later check the regulations of fintechs. Fintech. Okay, fintech, because every now and then there's discussion, so some random question can come up. Okay, let's get into the next topic. So the other day we have discussed something like the basic difference between FD and public debt. And we said public debt is more like a stock concept. Okay, and fiscal deficit is more like a flow concept. There's a basic difference because fiscal deficit is always talking for one fiscal year. Okay. Now, what is this discussion? RBI, in its biannual financial stability report, found rising public debt in Indian economy. So everybody knows this. Even IMF pinpointed. You are above 80, 82. You've touched 83. You will touch 100 soon. India said, IMF, mind your business. Okay, so we know what we are doing. We will not touch 100. That was our confidence, we said. So, and we will manage our debt, no issue. What are the previous questions asked? Okay, so there were previous questions like, which of the following are non-financial debts? Like treasury bills, credit cards. This is one question that was already asked earlier. Okay, you can go back and see the question once. Okay, so non-financial treasury bills and these kind of questions that was already asked already. FRBM also, there were questions earlier. FRBM, fiscal responsibility and budget management. Check FRBM and NK Singh, etc. because he directly talks about what should be the debt to GDP ratio. Okay. Now, here, finance. Where did we go? Okay, yeah, come on. So financial stability report. Okay, so here if you see, presents the subcommittee of Financial Stability and Development Council assessment of the strength of India's financial system, etc. FSDC, see the prime role of FSDC, which is headed here, you can see, FSDC's primary function is to reduce or resolve disputes between regulatory bodies. So whenever regulatory bodies fight, then obviously the political class will have an advantage. So they were fighting with respect to different things, and one such aspect was also ULIP. ULIP is unit linked insurance plan. So the insurance fellow will come to you and tell you, you put money in insurance, we will give you 20% returns, 16, 18% returns. Why? Because that money is going into stock markets. Only then somebody can promise you 15 to 20% returns, otherwise nobody can promise you such high returns. Though it is an insurance plan, since money was going into stock markets, so SEBI said, we will regulate ULIPs. But IRDA was also upset. IRDA, Insurance Regulatory Development Authority. So there was this conflict between regulatory bodies with respect to how do we regulate. And that is when you have this FSDC coming in. FSDC, Financial Stability and Development Council, is chaired by the finance minister and headed by the finance minister, and it includes heads of regulators like SEBI, IRDA, Pension Fund Regulatory Development Authority, etc. But the chairperson, that is what I was saying. If you fight, then the head would be the political class. Got the point? RBI is fighting with SEBI, or say now SEBI is fighting with IRDA. This is what will happen. Okay, it is responsible for ensuring financial stability and coordination among regulators. This is what they were trying to say. Okay, so key highlights of the report, Financial Stability and Development Council report, FSDC here. If you see the report here, one is India still the driver of global growth. Okay. And one important observation is that our NPAs have declined to a great extent. NPA, you can see gross NPAs and net NPAs coming down to a great extent. So you can see here 2.3 and 0.5% respectively. We have discussed what is gross and net NPA. So one important observation they were saying is our NPAs have come down to the report is saying our NPAs have come down to a great extent. But at the same time, one more problem here, rising public debt. So here if you see, public debt as a percentage of GDP has remained relatively on a higher side, obviously more than 80%. But recommendation encasing is 60%. Okay, so 60 is basically central government 40 and states 20, but we've touched 83 also. Is that okay? Now here if you see about public debt, it is accumulated amount of borrowings that government and other public sector bodies owe to the private sector and foreign governments. That means their public debt can be divided into internal debt as well as external debt. Okay, public debt can be divided into internal debt as well as external debt. They have, see, developed country. You can have debt. See, it's all dependent on your credibility. See, I can't borrow the way Adani borrows. I can't compare myself with Adani. No, I can't say Adani is raising so much of loan. Why can't I? Okay, the whole logic is when I talk about GFCF. What is GFCF? Gross fixed capital formation. We'll come to that discussion. So whenever I'm raising debt in the market, now is my I increasing in the so if you know this formula, okay, private final consumption expenditure or personal final consumption expenditure, whatever it is, private, you are going and buying Lakshmikant book in the market, it will come here. Okay, so this is government final consumption expenditure. Okay, and next is net export. Okay, fine. So here, this is I is what? Investment. It includes what? So this can also be called as GCF. GCF is what? Gross capital formation. It includes what? GFCF, gross fixed capital formation. Gross fixed capital formation. That means who can contribute to this GFCF? Can government contribute to GFCF? Yes, don't get confused. Suppose government is building infrastructure, government is building some roads, dams, etc. All that is part of GFCF. Is that okay? What about private player? Can they contribute to GFCF? Yes, private player is buying some capital goods, machines. There is capital formation happening. That is also part of GFCF. Okay. And then can we contribute? Can we contribute? Yes. How do we contribute to GFCF? How do we contribute to GFCF? Suppose you are constructing a new house as an existing land. Land as it is, I'll not put it here. But if you're constructing some house on the existing land, etc., all that will also be part of my gross fixed capital formation. New additions. Suppose livestock is also increased to a great extent. Livestock, buffaloes, cows, great extent. That is also part of GFCF. Okay. One more important observation. Generally, depreciation is not part of GFCF. But if you're spending huge amount of money on maintenance of assets, huge amount of money on maintenance. Generally, maintenance of assets is not seen as part of capital formation, but you're spending huge amount of money on maintenance of assets, that will also be part of my GFCF. Are you able to get this? Okay, so this is GFCF is a major and most important category in my investment or I. Now the problem with government is, of course, I don't say problem, but the understanding here is, Madam said FD should be brought down to 4.4% of GDP. FD is what? Fiscal deficit. The last year budget, Madam wants. But on the other side, my nominal GDP has come down because you assume 10.1, but it is around 8.1, 8.2. This is always as a percentage of my GDP. So that means my government cannot spend if it wants to adhere to the target. If it wants to follow fiscal prudence, I cannot spend more. One more, Madam has reduced GST rates. Because of that, GST tax collections come down even if my nominal GDP is coming down. Because tax is always based on nominal GDP. You go and buy a product not at base year prices. When you go and buy a product, you buy it at current prices. If the prices are not increasing, the tax collections for the government also will come down. On one side, GST collections will come down if my prices in the market are not increasing. Along with that, Madam has given a lot of concessions with respect to GST rates and last year rebates with respect to income tax. That means we have to wait and watch exactly how the tax to GDP turns out this and next year also. So revenues for the government is going to be less. Then government either has to reduce its spending on revenue expenditure or it has to reduce its spending on these things, or it will not procure machines. Government companies are there, PSUs are there, defense companies are there like Bell or Mazdoc and these kind of companies. They are not buying new machines from the market. That is also capital formation. Why? You can't anyhow reduce subsidy. You can't say, I'll not give 15,000 rupees or freebies because you'll not win elections. It's a very big task for the government. Government has to spend money here. You can't reduce this. Then is it that government ends up reducing this GFCF? That means you borrowed, let's say. Your debt is increasing on one side. Not only central government, state government. If your debt to GDP is going up, you are touching 83%. Now, but if my GFCF is not increasing, are you able to get this? Maybe because of multiple reasons, because I have to adhere to fiscal prudence or many other things, or maybe because of these conditions. That means debt is good, provided my debt also is leading to increase in GFCF, because it will lead to future output. This is, how do you define capital formation, capital stock? It will lead to future output. My future growth of my country is dependent on GFCF. If this is not going up, but Debt numbers are going up, touching 82, 83. That is not a good sign for anybody. This is how I can say debt is bad. The same thing applies, saying for developed countries, it's more than 100%, 120, 140, 150. Then it's not about 100, 120, 150, 83. It is about this. If government is borrowing, government is making interest payments. Who is funding that interest payment? Taxpayer. My tax collections are increasing, or I'm paying a lot of tax to the government, but I'm not able to find a good job, nor I don't have a good infrastructure. Got the point, right? I'm not saying we don't have. I'm only saying that if government increases this number, I need good roads, I need good hospitals, government hospitals, I need good schools, then that debt is justified. Simple logic. Otherwise, the debt is not justified according to IMF, not according to me. Got the point, right? So that's very important that GFCF has to increase. It's not increasing, but this number is going up. That is the trouble. I hope it is clear. Okay, so it's not about debt. Debt is not wrong. Borrow. Okay, but where that borrowed money is going is the question. Okay, I think it is clear. This is very, in a developing nation, it's very difficult. That's the reason. Politics is a very difficult game. Very difficult game. Because if you spend on health and education, you will not win the election. State governments I'm talking about. You will not win the election if you spend. Very difficult. This is the problem. We're saying that roads are there, infrastructure is there, people may not recognize it. These are all problems which are there, so government has to balance all this and still get the growth. Got it, right? Let's move forward now. Understood. So no, don't ask like debt is high, low. This is what you should know. So now public debt can be internal debt, external debt, right? Now the previous question, all that is there here, it is written. So one more observation here. Public debt includes debt of central government and state governments. That is called as general debt. Center, state, UTs put together. And excluding intergovernmental borrowings. Excluding intergovernmental borrowings. Public debt can be internal or external. Internal debt is obviously more than external debt. This is the data of the previous budget you can see here. Internal debt is more than, almost like 96% is internal debt. So internal debt can be raised through marketable securities like G-Secs, as well as marketable means you can sell it any time. You're raising it straight from the market, and these are mainly negotiable instruments. These are negotiable instruments. Okay, then about external debt, we have discussed this already. This is a previous question. That's the reason they've added this. External debt is more for private or non-sovereign debt. External debt is more than sovereign debt. Why? Because major chunk of my external debt is ECB, and ECB is primarily private. So non-sovereign means private debt is more than sovereign debt or government debt. This is one. Major chunk of my external debt, when we look at major chunk of external debt, is in US dollar, followed by rupee. Masala bond, if you're borrowing using masala bond, is also you're borrowing in rupees. Then you can borrow in SDRs, Japanese currency, etc. All my external debt is in dollars. That was the previous question. All my external debt. No, 54% is in dollar. That's all. Around 31% here you can see it is in rupees. Second place is rupee denominated external debt. Second place is rupee denominated external debt. That is what you should understand. Okay, so here there is something like non-financial corporations except the central bank held the highest share, and then followed by deposit-taking corporations. Debt instrument loans remain the largest component, followed by currency and deposits. Okay, so what is the potential impact on high debt? Too much of debt means over a period, if debt is increasing, then fiscal deficit will also. See, fiscal deficit will increase public debt. Increase in public debt means more interest payments. More interest payments again will create trouble for my fiscal prudence for this current year also. Okay, so that is what they are talking about. Okay, so here FRBM and okay. Now here, what are the reasons for public debt in India? Reasons for public debt, one is persistent fiscal deficits. and high revenue expenditures, day-to-day expenditures, especially those interest payments are there. And during COVID, obviously, all our deficits have increased. All our deficits have increased. Fiscal deficit went above 9%. So always remember, if the debt is increasing, it will distort intergenerational equity. Distort intergenerational equity. External debt growth. India's external debt rose 10% to so much, so 736 billion at the end of March 2025. Obviously, pandemic period, revenue was not coming, but at the same time, there was a lot of spending made by the government. Is that okay? This I have written, student read. That means you should read. Okay. So here, scheme completed a decade. Why are we discussing? 10 years is over. Okay. And here it falls under Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Type of scheme, centrally sponsored scheme. Okay. Now then you'll also check Amrut 2. It focuses on water and sewerage and aims to provide tap water to all households in towns, improve sewerage management, etc. So just check once later. Okay. India, you can see India, fourth largest economy. As per recent World Economic Outlook, India has surpassed Japan to become fourth largest economy worldwide. Okay, and top largest economies, I always feel bad seeing this number. That is the Chinese number. 1980s, India was better than China. That is why I'm saying I'm not worried about US. We're not worried about US. It is about this country where India was better than them in 1980s. And today when I see the numbers, but we're always very happy with our growth. We always keep discussing, okay, so India will become a $5 trillion economy. Of course, we've not become because of COVID. We are improving. I'm not saying India is not a growing economy. India looks bad only when I compare with this number. Okay. Then another important thing which you will go back and see, middle income trap. I've discussed that in mains many times, but what is this middle income trap? So when you're checking middle income trap, you will check how do you define low income, lower middle income, upper middle income countries, and rich countries. Okay, so China is a, no, not high income. China is an upper middle income country. Upper middle income country. It is based on GNP per capita. Go back and check the numbers once and tell me. Okay, and India is a lower middle income country. Middle income trap means you're trapped in this middle income. It is very difficult for countries to move above this middle income and become a high income country, like South Korea. South Korea has done it. Okay, so South Korea has done it. Of course, this happens through aspects like innovation, spending money on R&D. Otherwise, you will be stuck in middle income. So go back and check what is this middle income trap. Okay, now come back. Top largest economies here we have mentioned. Okay. So here basically there are 8 aggregates of estimating national income. How many aggregates? 8. GDP, MP. There are 8 aggregates of estimating national income. 8 aggregates of estimating national income. Okay. No other method. Okay. Only 8 aggregates of estimating national income, right? How do I define national income then? Very difficult question. No, no, I want a basic layman's definition. No, 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 wait, wait. Words here. Productive income. That means in my national income, you don't have transfer payments. I think you know what is a transfer payment. It is always productive income. CDS, question asked. Okay, so productive income of who? Normal residents of a country. Normal residents of a country. And this productive income can be from within the country. This productive income can be from within the country plus outside. Or rest of, outside here means I'm talking about rest of the world. Productive income of normal residents of India from within the country plus rest of the world. One line definition. Productive income of normal residents of the country from within the country plus rest of the world. It is only productive income. It is normal resident. Sum total of normal resident is what we call it as nationals. Sum total of normal resident. Sum total of normal resident. So when it's sum total of normal, who is a normal resident? Normal resident can be individuals, it can be entities also. When it comes to individual, somebody who is staying in India for more than 1 year and his common economic interest or normal economic interest lies in India. Only then you are calling him as normal resident. A tourist coming to India for 6 months, he is not a normal resident of India. Are able to get this tourist coming to, he may be here for 6 months, 8 months, but he is not a normal resident of India. His primary economic interest should lie in India. That means he is consuming, saving, investing in India. Sometimes there can be a situation where somebody is a Chinese citizen, but he can be a normal resident of India as well. Exceptional case. He's a Chinese citizen, but he's a normal resident of India because he's here for more than 1 year and his primary economic interest is in India. Okay. So one method of estimation is obviously you can estimate it through, and most common method which is used for estimation of national income is NNP-FC. If you see the books, it is most common way of estimation. Whenever we say national income, you generally talk about NNP-FC. Okay. Productive income is income coming from factors of production. Income coming from factors of production. That means, you know what are factors of production? It should be either land, labor, capital, entrepreneur. Basic, simple understanding. So, transfer payment is not a factor income. Why? Because there is no good nor service that is rendered. Suppose your parents are sending you money from abroad, you did not render any good nor service. You said thank you. Send more. Free, no? Okay, so that means there's no activity there. That is what is a transfer payment. But if Shah Rukh Khan is receiving some rent from London, Shah Rukh Khan is receiving some profits from the restaurant he's running in London, and Shah Rukh Khan is a normal resident of India. Are you able to get this? These are all factor incomes. So that is what when we talk about, so when you use this word GNP, it is what? It is GDP plus NFIA, net factor income from, okay. So what is this net factor income from abroad? Factor income of normal residents, who are working outside, which is coming into India, working outside, which is coming into India, minus factor income of non-residents who are working here. Simple words. Factor income from abroad minus factor income to abroad. But here it is about normal residents only. And this factor income will not include remittances, not include transfer payments. No transfer payments here, because transfer payment is not a factor income. Are you able to get this? Transfer payment is not a factor income. It should not be here. Okay. So GNP can be greater than GDP. GNP can be lower than GDP. GNP can be lower because if my NFIA is negative, India's cases NFIAs are negative. So NFIA can be negative as well. So NFIA is negative means my GNP can be lower than GDP as well. Okay. So this NFIA includes what? It includes net compensation to employees. It includes net compensation to employees like the wages. Okay. So net income coming from, or it can be income or profits coming from, Tata is running some business outside India and there is some profits and some earnings coming from outside. Retained earning. Tata is not distributed there in the form of dividends. That money is coming back to India and Tata is a normal resident of India. Okay, and similarly it also includes aspects related to rents. That means income from property, income from entrepreneurship, business. Okay, all this. This is what here. This is what is. You don't have foreign investments here. You don't have transfer payments here. This should be factor income only. Okay, that is clear. I think there's no confusion there. Now let's move forward. Okay, so when we talk about GDP, money value of all final goods and services produced within the domestic territory of India in one financial year. This domestic territory includes net embassies and consulates. It also includes net shipping and aviation. Indian ship outside. Russian ship attacked means you have attacked Russian territory. US has done that. Of course, whose flag was there is important. Got the point. It is as good as Russian territory. This is what it is. Net embassies and consulates. Indian embassy in US is as good as Indian territory in US. US embassy in India is as good as US territory in India. So that is why I said net embassies and consulates. Net shipping and aviation is also part of my GDP. I'm not talking about GNP. I'm talking about GDP. Is that okay? Then there are three methods of calculating GDP. One is you have the production, and you have expenditure, and we have income. Okay. Now, official methodology, which you see here, okay, which is used by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, which follows the system of national accounts. So we basically are talking about the production method. Okay, if you see the logic here, so the new GDP calculation, which we have come up with in 2015, what are the main changes they did in 2000? This was a mains question earlier, obviously. So one was we have changed the base year. Okay, so then GDP estimation was shifted from factor cost to market price. Today, when I say official GDP of India is GDP estimated at market prices, not factor costs. Official GDP of India is GDP estimated at market prices adjusted to inflation. This is what is official GDP of India. Okay, then they have come up with the concept of GVA at basic prices. They have come up with the concept of GVA at basic prices. GVA is what? Gross value addition. So GVA as a concept is not new. What is new is basic prices. What is the purpose of coming up with basic prices? To get the details of sector specific, separately agriculture output, separately manufacturing output. In agriculture, I want to check sector-specific data. So the sector-specific data is the main logic behind coming up with basic prices. So how do you get this basic price? So basic price is equal to factor cost plus okay, so and from there when we arrive at market prices, we do sigma GVA at basic price. So you calculate basic price for the primary sector, do it for secondary sector, do it for tertiary sector. And do sigma GVA at basic prices plus net product taxes. This is the formula. So net production tax means this is nothing but production taxes minus production subsidy. Product tax means net product taxes, product tax minus product subsidy. Where will GST go? GST is a product tax or a production tax? GST is a product tax. Service tax is a product tax. Excise duty is a product tax. That can be asked. They'll not ask formula. Which of the following is a product tax? Which of the following is a production tax? What about MSP? I know subsidy. Which subsidy? Are you sure? MSP, check and tell me. MSP is a product subsidy. Okay. Product subsidy. Each product it is different. Okay, rice, wheat, each product. See, basic logic of product taxes. Who will tell me? How do you define a product tax? Okay. See, product taxes are dependent on volume of output. Product taxes are dependent on volume of output. Suppose more cars I buy, more GST I will pay. Suppose on each car manufacturing there is excise duty. More the cars you are manufacturing, more is the excise duty. Why? Because it is there on each product. So product taxes are directly linked to production volume. That means if there is more output or there is more sale, automatically there will be more collection of product taxes. But taxes on land, etc., they are independent of how many cars I produce, how many products I sell. These are independent of production volume. Production taxes are independent of production volume. Product taxes are dependent on the volume of output. More I produce, more I sell, more is the tax collection. This is some basic difference. So if you have a doubt, go back and see what is a product tax, what is a production tax. Today there is no discussion of factor costs in the new GDP calculation. It is only basic prices and market prices. There is no discussion of factor costs anymore. You straight come to basic price, and from basic price we are arriving at market prices. So go back and revise if you have forgotten and check that once. Is that okay? So this is what they have written, also same that only. Now here one important observation. Of course here if I know national income, I can also arrive at personal income. Okay, so that's a very simple. If I know NNPFC, I can come from NNPFC to personal income. Okay, so there are certain things which are part of national income, which are not part of personal income. Things that are part of national income, which are not part of personal income. What are the things which are part of national income, which are not part of personal income? One is undistributed profits or retained earnings. So retained earnings or undistributed profits are not part of personal income, but they are part of profits, no? Something is part of profits means it is part of my national income. So when I say Viper, wages, interest, profit, rent. Okay, currently you are writing the formula as same thing. Compensation to employees, mixed income, operating surplus. This is the formula. It is nothing but Viper. Compensation to employees includes wages or salary in cash or kind. It can be not, it need not be in cash only, plus it also includes employers' contribution to social security. Employer's contribution to social security. Not employee, employer, employer's contribution. Employer, why? Because it's like salary. He is putting, for your PF, you are putting 1,000 rupees. He is putting 1,000 rupees. Whatever the company is putting, that is here. I hope it is clear. Okay. So for unorganized sectors, there's mixed income, and then you have operating surplus. This is the income method when we talk about income method. Okay. So all these are factor incomes. There are no transfer payments here. All these are coming from factors of production. You will not have any transfer payment here. Okay. So undistributed profit means the company is earning profit, but the company is retaining it with itself, not distributing in the form of wage nor interest or nothing. So that will not be part of. So here, national income, we have defined productive income. Okay, productive income. Okay. Then here we are talking about personal income. Suppose if I am putting NNPFC as the indicator. Okay. So from my national income, I am removing something called as undistributed profit, which is the retained earning. Retained earning, this is profit, part of profit only. That means profit is part of national income, but that profit is not coming to the household. Now, either in the form of wage, nor in the form of interest, nor in the form of profit, because it is retained by the firm. Firm retained, it is retained earnings of the firm. Similarly, corporate taxes. Corporate tax is also part of profit only. After profit, yesterday we would have got profit before tax. Then you have profit after tax. So that means corporate tax is also part of profit only. That is getting generated because of a factor income called because of a factors of production, that is entrepreneurship. So corporate tax is going to the government, it is not coming to the household. But there are certain things which are added, which is not there in national income because it is not productive income, but it is part of personal income. That is nothing but your transfer payment. Are you able to get this? So this is how you arrive at personal income, and from there you remove the direct taxes, you come to personal disposable income. Personal disposable income. Income in the hands of the households, which he can use for creating demand, that is consumption, or if he wants, he will save and invest. See, those who have not read or forgotten, just go back and see few things. One, GNP, then see new GDP calculation like MCA 21 database, GVA basic prices. Okay, then they have come up with few more things there. Livestock additions, financial sector complete data was also taken. Okay, and they have changed the base year. Okay, then enterprise method. All these were 2015 new GDP calculation. Just go and see. Already mains was there. So if at all is asking in prelims, go back and check what it is. Is that okay? Then check what is personal income, how is it different from national income. Then check what is the difference between private income and personal income. Difference between private income and personal income. Check the definitions. How is private income different from personal income? So personal income, you're only talking about income of households. But when you talk about private income, what else is going to come? Go and check that. Is that okay till there? Then also check examples of product taxes, production taxes, examples of product subsidies and production subsidies. Examples, so that if in prelims if is asking, then you should be able to identify the answer. Then also check last 5 years, did my GDP growth rates consistently increase or not? Also check per capita income growth rates increased or not consistently. Last 5 years. These are called as trend-based questions, which can come up in prelims. Earlier they used to ask. So now they can ask because it's already been 5 years that COVID is over. Okay, so GDP growth rates increasing, tax to GDP growth rates increasing, or per capita incomes have they increased consistently in the last 5 years, etc. So these are few things which you will check from this chapter. Then PPP, GDP calculated at PPP, GDP calculated at nominal exchange rate. And what are the numbers? What are our numbers and what are the ranks? These are the things, basic. Okay, now see here, come back now. Now there is this data which shows MOSPI releases CAPEX, Capital Expenditure Survey. Okay, what is this? CAPEX is nothing but capital expenditure only. A forward-looking survey on private sector CAPEX investment intentions. Forward-looking survey on private sector CAPEX investment intentions. That is what is CAPEX survey. The first of its kind by the National Statistics Office under MOSPI was conducted under the Collection of Statistics Act. Okay. Private sector CAPEX grew 66% from 22 to 25. But actually CAPEX of private players slowly started slowing down this year. That they will not mention. Okay, so, but okay, improvement is there. That means if you want to put money into a private sector, what does CAPEX indicate? If Maruti is doing more and more CAPEX means Maruti is more confident about the demand of its cars in future. Then only it will come up with more machines, more factories, etc. Okay, but if you're not confident about demand, then you will not spend money on CAPEX. This is what is the logic of CAPEX. Manufacturing enterprises accounted for 48% of obviously, CAPEX is needed only for private sector primarily. Service sectors also need, but when you look at CAPEX, primarily it is private sector, manufacturing units. Definition, money spent by government on the development of machinery. Okay, so here it can be by the private sector also, but when we're talking about central government's budget, then here, there you use what is the money spent by the government on machinery, buildings, assets, etc. Capital expenditure includes money spent on acquiring fixed and intangible assets, upgrading an existing asset, repayment of loan, etc. That is yesterday we have talked about, no? Capital expenditure includes loans repaid, okay, money spent on infrastructure, etc. Okay, and also loans given. Capital expenditure of the government will always, what it will do, it will increase asset or decrease liability. Capital receipts of the government, it will either reduce asset or increase liability. Is that okay? Understood? Okay, so this capital expenditure, loans given, loans repaid, all this is here only. Okay, outgoing. Okay, fine. Defense equipment is also capital expenditure. If regular defense is revenue expenditure, but you are spending money on equipments and even financial related assets, suppose it's basically financial liabilities, financial assets also. Okay, yes. So capital, so there's a difference here about does revenue expend, does not create assets and all that. Okay, this you can go back and see once what it is. Not so. India secured an uncontested position in UN Intergovernment Working Group of Experts. Okay, so just see what it is later. So here you have this Human Development Report 2025. Okay, so here if you see a matter of choice, people and possibilities in the age of AI highlights the critical role of AI in shaping the next chapter of human development. Just it's a factual thing which you have to look into. So India moved up 3 spots to rank 130 out of 193 countries in the Human Development Report. Okay, so factual just. So India remains in the medium human development category with a value of 0.685 there. Life expectancy, schooling and education. Okay, so here you can see. HDI value is the geometric mean of normalized indices for the following 3 dimensions. And student read means you should read. You should not say, okay, it will not come in exam. Nothing like that. We don't know. Anything can come sometimes. Okay, so go back and see. I'll leave you in 5 minutes. I can, yeah. You're already overburdened. I can understand. Oh, enough, no? But, okay. So here, from here, see one important observation. Schemes, uh, you will again later on check the schemes separately, especially with respect to health, women, agriculture. If you decided not to read for exam, then you read these 3. Suppose you have decided, I will not read schemes. There will be some students who would have already made up their mind, I will not read schemes. They're very clear. So then what you should do, then you'll read Ministry of Agriculture, Women and Child Development, and Health. These 3 you will definitely see what is there, and also check anything mentioned in the budget. For example, there were schemes related to pulses last year. Okay, so that means in the budget they were talking something about pulses. So now also we'll discuss that only. But whatever madam talks, that is more, madam will stress few things. And remember, so one is the president's madam's speech, and another one is whatever is discussed in the budget. Definitely UPSC will open and make 1 or 2 questions. Why, I don't know. Exactly why, I don't know exactly why, but it is basically you should know. As a bureaucrat, you should know what government is doing. That may be the reason. So that is the reason they are framing questions from there, but that's important. Is that okay? So I'm not moving forward, but one more class we will do that. So there are some topics. See, one more thing here. See, some students yesterday they were asking, sir, what are the main topics for prelims? This was one question. Okay, so what are the main topics for prelims? So every time, so one is, see, on a general note, where are the questions coming from? 1, financial markets. No? Then 2, banking. Banking means not about Basel III, complicated technical things. Rather than those things, NBFC, small finance bank, payment bank, how does it operate, cooperative bank, new regulations, urban cooperative bank, there the questions will be asked. Then third area where questions, last year they've asked fiscal policy also, that is primary deficit calculation, etc. They've asked. Why they have asked, that's a simple question only. You can straight away mark it from regular classes. You don't need a PT and all that for that. Okay, so if you are conceptually clear, just you have to subtract and mark the answer. So that was fiscal policy and taxing. This time taxing, you can check GST 2.0, check any direct tax reforms which madam is talking about, that also you can check. So this is basically taxing. Then you have this external sector. External sector means some basic concepts like BOP, FDI, where is it going, basic definition of FDI, FI, which one will go in FDI, which one will be treated as FPI. So these are some basic concepts. And then agriculture. Agriculture, you cannot say, it is for mains. Remember this. Agriculture, some students have this idea, the question will not be asked from infrastructure, question may not be asked from agriculture. No, basic you know about infrastructure, you know about PPP, maybe some random question comes up, you will be able to eliminate and mark the answer. But agriculture separately, you have to work on agriculture, because agriculture, definitely 2 questions will be there. And there will be 2 schemes. This is how the question paper is. So that is the reason any too much of technicality, we need not worry much. Very clear conceptual clarity is there, then 12 out of 15 questions are automatically done. Okay, then what all economic survey or whatever sudden these things, where students like, they feel like last 2 years, 3 years economic survey, all that is marketing. You don't need 3-year economic survey. One economic survey, what is there in that, if I know, that's more than sufficient. In that also, if I don't want to read the whole economic survey, then first chapter at least I will read. Got the point, right? These are something which, so that is the reason your focus should be on what is asked. Then also pull out last 3 years CDS and CAPF paper and observe the trend. Which topics more questions are coming. For example, poverty has not been touched in the last 3 years in UPSC, but that has been asked in CDS or CAPF. That means I will not neglect poverty this time. This is how. Then more factual questions are repeating in CDS and CAPF. That means there is a higher probability of a factual question. So when I'm reading my current affairs, some important facts I will try to observe. Then trend-based questions like continuous increase, decrease, last 4 or 5 years, there were no questions. Therefore that. Then reports also, IMF report, World Bank report, there used to be questions earlier, they stopped asking because government is not liking IMF maybe. But earlier one question definitely used to be there. See, if they ask concepts, there's no trouble, SDR. But if they ask a fact, there is a trouble. There is a trouble because you can't guess. And those who are prepared for other exams, other than UPSC, which are more factual, they will clear. But they will not clear mains. But they will reduce your chances of clearing prelims. That is the reason. So if these things are coming up in CDS, CAPF, that means I'll also read the reports. Report means which report is given by whom. These are the broad structures. And current affairs is maximum important for which all chapters. One is external sector, financial markets. These are the banking. So if you ask me the more, of course, tomorrow if different current affair comes up, I don't know. Because I'm not the paper setter. But most of the time, 3 areas you can't neglect current affairs: banking, financial sector. Financial sector means all that ETF, swaps and all that. A lot of questions being asked. And then external sector, few basics of external sector. Okay. We'll complete agriculture and then agriculture and other things in the next class. Thank you.